What's up everybody, we're back in Uldir with another raid guide, and today we're taking a look at Mother on Mythic difficulty. So I'll be going over all the different mechanics, how to handle them, and our overall tactic for this fight. So for this fight you want 2 tanks and either 4 or 5 healers, and the rest being a healthy mix of ranged and melee DPS. It is preferable to have a few DPS that have very strong AoE or cleave, and a few that have very strong single target. Not a lot has changed from heroic to mythic for our dear Mother, apart from a few new adds, and everything hits a lot harder. So the goal here is to get her to the last room and burn her down when she takes 100% increased damage. To do this, we need to deal with the different rooms and the defense grid. So when you start the fight and whenever you move Mother into a new room, an energy counter for that room will start. When it reaches 100%, it will set off the cleansing purge, killing off everything in that room. So let's start out with the grid and what's new here. So anytime a player passes through the grid, everyone in the raid takes around 33k damage, and 1 ad spawns per player. The new thing here is that coupled with the increase in damage taken from passing through the grid, there's also 2 new type of ads that can spawn anytime anyone passes through. So you have the standard remnant of corruption, which any DPS who passes through the grid will spawn, and the new resistant bacterium, which tanks will spawn, and viral contagion, which healers will spawn. They all work pretty much the same. The remnant of corruption casts clinging corruption, needs to be interrupted, or it's a wipe. The viral contagion, however, casts endemic virus, which needs to be stunned in order to be interrupted, and the resistant bacterium casts bacterial outbreak, which also needs to be stunned in order to be interrupted. So as I said, all the ads are stunnable, but you can also use pushbacks and grips and things like that in order to interrupt them. The most important cast is still the clinging corruption. If it goes off, it is most likely a wipe. The endemic virus is dispellable, however, the person with it needs to be 10 yards away from anyone else before getting dispelled. Same thing with bacterial outbreak, it is not a wipe, but it increases the damage done by all other ads by 10% and deals some damage, and it stacks. Ideally, no cast at all should go off, but some are more forgiving than others. So how do we deal with all of this? Well, there are actually right now 2 ways to do this, so I'll be going over both of them. The first one will probably get fixed or tuned because I doubt Bliss will be happy with this. No worries though, it's not a bug, it's not an exploit, it's just clever use of mechanics. So here it is. The easiest way to deal with it is simply have 4 groups of 5 players in them. After the first purifying flames, 3 groups crosses over in a staggered fashion. Like group 1, 2 seconds later, group 2, 2 seconds later, group 3. In order for this to work, you will need to use pretty much every defensive and healing spell in your book. So each member in the raid pops a personal defensive, like shield wall, defensive stance, you name it, and healers pop their defensives. You will need rallying cry, darkness, disc priest bubble, devotion aura, and a spirit link wouldn't hurt, just to survive the actual ticks from crossing over. And on top of this, you will need healing cooldowns to top people off in between. That's why you go in a staggered fashion. So the goal is to top off the raid within 1-2 seconds after each group passes, so you can get the 3 groups over during the actual raid cooldowns. And as you can see, we simply wait for the purifying flame, then we stack next to the grid, and then we start going over with every cooldown available. If done successfully, you'll end up with 15 people in room 2 and 5 in room 1. The 5 players in room 1 should be either 1 tank, 1 healer and 3 DPS, or 1 tank, 2 healers and 2 DPS depending on tank damage. You need to keep Mother in the first room until the energy bar for that room is almost maxed out. And this is in order to get your cooldowns, your healing defensive cooldowns back before you cross over to room 3. Meanwhile, on the other side, once the 3 groups have crossed over, 15 ads will spawn that I mentioned before. Simply AoE and down, stun, interrupt and nuke. Shouldn't be an issue at all with 15 players. After that, the fun begins. The 15 players in room 2 will have to AFK and wait. AFK and wait, dodge some lasers, dodge some fire, and wait some more until the 5 players in room 1 crosses over. When that happens, kill any ads that spawn and prepare to go over to room 3. And again, you will want to keep Mother in room 2 until the energy bar for that room is almost full before you cross over. When you cross over into room 3, you will want to do the exact same thing as the first time, with the slight difference being all the groups cross over this time in a staggered fashion. So group 1, 2 seconds later, group 2, 2 seconds later, group 3, 2 seconds later, group 4. Doesn't have to be 2 seconds in between, but you want them to be topped off. You just have to try a bit and see what works for you. If you're successful, just wait for some DPS cooldowns, pop Bloodlust, and nuke away. This is by far the simplest way of dealing with Mother. Requires a bit of coordination, but in the end it's really simple. However, as I said, I assume this will be changed to no longer be possible. And due to this, I will add another way of doing Mother the more intended way, so to say, along with some of her other mechanics. You want to have an order for which players crosses over and when. The first group can be between 3 and 4, the more the better, but it depends a bit on your healing. The first group should consist of 1 tank, 1 healer, and the rest being DPS. You should have at least 1 AoE stun in this group, like a Monk or Havoc Demon Hunter, to be able to stun adds when there's a lot of casts about to go off. The second group should be either 2 or 3 DPS, 1 with an AoE stun or AoE silence. Third group, a healer and 1 DPS, and so on and so forth. The last group should be a tank and a healer to cross. So when we did it, the first 2 groups, we went for a Havoc Demon Hunter for the AoE stun, a Boomkin for the AoE silence, and a Rogue for single target stuns, coupled with my Hammer of Justice. And an Arms Warrior for that sweet Warbreaker Bladestorm action in order to burn them down fast. Single target stuns are great for the resistant bacterium and viral contagions, and AoE stuns if a lot of casts are going off at the same time. Keep in mind that diminishing return is a thing, so do not use AoE stuns unless it's needed. Regular interrupt for Remnant Corruption and single target stuns for the other 2 adds is better if possible. So members of the first few groups that crosses over should save their cooldowns for when the adds spawn. Burning the boss is only really important when you get to the last room. It's hard to give you an exact setup and group order because it all depends on gear, what classes you have, so you might have to try a couple of different setups before you find the right order for your raid, and how many you want to cross and when. So until Mother herself crosses over into the second room, all you have to deal with in the first room are the purifying flames, swirly patches on the ground, don't stand in them, and the wind tunnels. Position yourself, if possible, to be as close to the wall of whichever direction it's coming from. Using stuff like gateways, roar, windrush totem will greatly help you out with this. Tanks needs to keep a lookout for sanitizing strike, a frontal cone. Just face it away from the raid and move out of it yourself. When you get to the second room, you need to deal with all the previous abilities and the new lasers. So the big difference here is both type of beams spawn at the same time, meaning you will get lasers from the roof and across the room at the same time. Merely find a safe spot from the wall and stand in the swirlies to avoid the ones from the roof. The tricky part here is that you can get purifying flames and sanitizing strikes at the same time, so you have the whole raid standing in one swirly to avoid the wall and the roof, while all the flame patches spawn underneath you. So just keep a lookout for that, and as soon as the roof beams get down, just move away. And if you're tanking Mother, just make sure to face her away from the raid even when you're stacking in the swirlies. Your raid will appreciate not getting a hammer in the face, I promise. And once you get her to the last room, you pop Bloodlust, second pot, and nuke like never before. Get her down to 10% HP and the loot is yours. And well, that's pretty much it. The hardest part of this encounter is to get people across the rooms, finding the correct flow of it, so to say. And as I said, you might need to try out a couple of different setups for who crosses when, in what order to handle the adds in the best way, and stuff like that. But try to keep a steady flow and make sure to stun and interrupt the adds so that no casts go off. Nailing the timings for the laser beam takes a few tries, as well as the overlaps with both the beams and purifying flames or sanitizing strike can be a bit mean, to say the least. The healing in this fight is very intense, but also very predictable, so you want to set up your healing cooldowns and defensive cooldowns in advance. If you have 4 people crossing over at the same time, you will need things like Rallying Cry, Spirit Link, Devotion Aura, or anything like that in order to survive the big burst. Tank needs to be on their toes as well because she hits like a truck, so don't be afraid to use externals a lot. And if you need, you can switch whichever tank is tanking Mother when she reaches a new room. So for example, you can have Tank A burning through his or her cooldowns in the first room and Tank B in the second room. And again, Tank A in the third room. And that's pretty much it for this Uldir guide on Mythic Mother. If you have any questions at all, make sure to hit me up in the comments below. As always, if you like these kind of videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave me a like, and ring that notification bell and switch it to all. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.